Hey everyone, I want to share something that's really helped me recharge and refocus. You know how life can just get overwhelming sometimes, right? I found that taking a break to focus on my own well-being can actually make me more productive. And I discovered that firsthand at Mountainside Lodging and Retreats. It's not just a place to stay, it's truly a sanctuary for self-care. Whether it was taking peaceful walks in nature, cozying up by the fire, or simply finding some quiet time to reconnect with myself, Mountainside offers exactly what you need to reset and recharge. Now, if you're feeling like you need that kind of escape, here's the best part. Use promo code IWD406 for a very special discount this season. Trust me, you'll leave feeling truly refreshed, renewed, and ready to take on whatever's next. So if you're ready for a real break, use our code and book your stay today. You're listening to the IWD406 Podcast with your hosts, Julie Wells and Kate McLaughlin. Today on the podcast, we have Carli Seymour. She is a fifth-generation Montanan portrait photographer, a griever, and recovering addict. Congratulations. That's amazing. That's amazing. Dedicated to shaping the culture surrounding alcohol to make our area safer for all of us. In addition, she is one of the founders of Montana Bar Fairies and will be sharing her remarkable story on the podcast today. Welcome, Carli.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so excited and I'm so honored to just learn all about you and your story. And obviously we're going to be covering some really sensitive, deep topics.
Yeah.
And I'm prepared for it. I'll probably cry a little bit.
Whatever. Bring it on.
Maybe a lot.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that's perfect.
Yes. But let's start with our first question. Are you obviously an original Montanan?
Yes, but I've been corrected by my family. I'm not fifth generation. My parents weren't born here. My great grandmother, though, was born in Whitefish Hospital when it was a house.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can claim fifth generation anymore.
You can't claim the fifth generation?
No.
Okay. That's okay.
So I've been misstating just how Montanan I am.
Wait a minute. Okay, back that one up. Because you know how everybody is so big on, I'm first generation. Second, my kids are not even first generation. We moved here like when they were teenagers, 10, 12 years old. Yeah, but the pride in that is crazy.
It is. And that's why I want to make sure that I'm honest about my status as a Montanan.
But you know what? If you have extended family members that were born here, just claim it. You can move away. You can come back.
Generally, I do. Generally, I do.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. Okay. You grew up in Montana.
I did. Yes. I was born in Kalispell and I went to school in Columbia Falls and spent most of my time there.
How was that growing up in Columbia Falls?
It was good. We moved there when I was 6, so I was very young. So I did the majority of my schooling in Columbia Falls. I remember my parents being advised not to buy a home in Columbia Falls. At the time, it was seen as lesser than.
Yeah.
And that wasn't our experience there. We lived in a neighborhood with a ton of other kids.
Yeah.
Surrounded by families. And so we got to have a really awesome, idyllic childhood of running around with the other neighborhood children. And so it was great. I have no complaints there. Obviously, there are small town dynamics that are confusing.
Oh, yeah. Been there, done that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so if I wanted to find complaints, I could. But overall, I feel like it was...
It's okay.
Overall, I feel like it was a great experience. And
yeah,
would recommend. It's no longer viewed at lower rent, however. Like the cost.
Was it really?
Yeah. I mean, at the time... I remember somebody saying not to buy a home there because it was the armpit of the valley.
Shut it.
I know. And now homes in Columbia Falls are worth not as much as Whitefish, but they're not cheap.
I'm sorry, but the whole freaking state is expensive.
I know.
As far as real estate goes. It's crazy.
It's insane.
I'm not going to complain about the real estate taxes. I know we don't want to go down this road, but I'm like, holy shit, coming from Illinois where we were paying $30,000+ a year to the government. And then here it's $3,000. That's still a lot, $2,000. And I know people are not getting used to that raise, but I'm like, that's a hell of a lot better where I came from. But I'm not happy about the home pricing. I'm like, what is that? I live in a box.
I know.
And it's
difficult.
super expensive. But Columbia Falls, though, I told my husband when we first traveled through here, I'm like, this place is cool.
It's awesome.
And it's close to Glacier.
Yes. And the schools are in close proximity to one another. So if you can walk to one school, you can probably walk to the other ones as well. And they have a great bike path and just those little things that I feel like are great for young families and children in school.
And the downtown area is really picking up.
Oh, yeah. It's like a different place than it was 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And do your parents still have their home there?
Yes. They both do. I keep hitting the microphone.
You're okay.
They both have separate homes there. They got divorced when I was 14. So my mom was able to buy a place and their home values have just exploded like
crazy.
It's
like probably 100 plus thousand when they originally bought it. Now it's 700,000.
Yeah.
But just to give you guys, listeners, an idea of how crazy it is, it's almost like Florida. There was a place in Florida that my in-laws looked at it right on the beach, 125,000. Now it's almost $1 million. It's like, this is the way it's going.
Totally.
And it's a kind of a shithole down there. The house that they looked at was a shithole.
Both of my parents' houses are very modest family homes. There's nothing.
Right.
And so it's pretty amazing. The interesting thing is that you can't afford to buy a different house. So you have to stay.
Yes. You got to deal with what you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you can't go anywhere.
You get to just look at Zillow and say, oh, wow, would you look at that? But that's as far as you can go.
I know, right?
Unless you're ready to move to Kansas City or somewhere where you can get a better deal.
That's true. No, thanks.
Yeah,
I do like up here. It's pretty awesome. Were you a ski kid growing up?
No.
No, you didn't like skiing?
No, I didn't like much of anything. And skiing is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
It's no joke. A pass on the mountain is huge. And we did take a couple skiing lessons. Yeah. My brothers were a little bit more into it. Had I expressed great interest in it, we would have found a way to make it work. But it was not something that I was forced into.
You were forced into. So my other question is, if you weren't like a kid that's involved in all the crazy outdoor activity allure that all these kids are involved in now, I know you got the sports. Were you a sports kid?
No.
Okay.
No, I had almost no interest in anything. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is not, so did you do music? Because you're creative.
Yeah.
But did you discover that creativity early on in school?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I remember feeling closer to choir and English classes, and I had big aspirations of being a movie star or an actor and doing theater. I loved the Missoula Children's Theater would come through Columbia Falls and we would do these little productions, and it totally was something that was really awesome for me. Loved it. It totally set me on fire.
Were you in theater?
Oh yeah.
So you were a part of the plays and the production. Were you in the play or were you more from the technical standpoint?
I was in the play. I was ready to go for it.
You're ready to be the next Michelle Williams that came from Montana.
From Kalispell. She was born in Kalispell.
Oh, she was?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Michelle.
I know. She never comes back.
No,
I think she moved away when I looked it up one time because I'm like, we have no hometown glory for Michelle Williams. That's so bizarre.
It is.
Oscar-winning actress. And she lived here for 9 years and then left.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
That's why.
Do you know people that know her?
No.
Nothing. So she was just like a fly on the wall?
I guess.
At school?
She moved away as a kid. So she was like born here, but she didn't spend her formative years here is my understanding.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I wanted to do creative stuff. I felt a little stifled. Columbia Falls, and I think this is true for small towns in general. It's not limited to Columbia Falls, but it was very sports focused and lots of sports pride.
Right.
And because that was something I wasn't interested in, I did feel a little ostracized by that. So I took a lot of comfort in great English teachers and great choir teachers and people who had that, you don't have to do sports. You don't have to go to school to be a physical therapist or whatever.
Yes.
Because that just wasn't something that was interesting to me. And that was something that I was definitely interested in. It changed as I got older. I randomly developed stage fright at probably 13.
Yeah, I can see that happens though.
Oh yeah. You have all these changes. Everything's different. Your hormones are different.
Yes. People judging.
Yes.
But you think people are judging in your mind. Really, they're in their own minds, right?
Absolutely.
But at that age, you're like, oh, that critical inner critic is just on fire.
Yeah. And everything's the biggest deal in the entire world.
I know.
Your world is still very small. And so I developed stage fright. Not that I was going to... I'm not at all insinuating that I was on track to become a Michelle Williams.
It's okay.
It was never going to happen. Okay. It was never going to happen.
Yeah.
But it was something that I really enjoyed doing and did a little in Whitefish, and it made a lot of friends doing that. Some that I still am connected to this day. So it was a really important part of my growing up and eventually finding myself, if you will.
There's a couple of things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this in our pre-chat, but what I want to say is, so I noticed, I don't think it's ever changed. I came from Illinois, small town, rural community. Either you have the kids that play the sports, you have the band kids, you have the theater kids, and then you have the kids that don't do anything. And then I remember my mom saying, you got to do something or you're going to be in trouble. Oh, yeah. And we all go through that kind of rebellion stage in school. Mine didn't go on until I was in college. That was when I was like, oh, there's a whole new world out there.
Probably for the best. Yes.
And my husband was early on, like rebellion. And then he got to college and he was bored. And I was like, what? There's a whole new world in college that you can do amazing, crazy shit. But during high school, it's so funny. I don't think that's ever changed. And when you're in a small town versus a big city, that magnification is so big.
Oh, yeah.
You really can tell the kids that are like, I don't connect with sports. I don't want to do band. I'm not really in. No one's really helped me with my creative side of my brain. I'm in lost land and I'm trying to figure life out. And plus, who knows what's going on with their home life.
Right.
And you had mentioned that your parents split at 14. That's a huge transition.
For sure. Yeah.
Did you struggle?
Yes. And I think that we've come to, all things considered, it was a great divorce in the sense that at this point in time, 10 years later, 15 years later, my parents are better friends now than they probably ever have been. They love each other. There's no animosity. And so we've maintained a really strong family unit. But there's a lot of transition at the beginning.
Yeah.
And especially when everything is going so crazy. I had transferred out of Columbia Falls into Glacier High School in Kalispell because it was a bigger pool. And I figured,
you did that in high school or in junior high?
I did that in high school. I decided I was going to, freshman year.
What?
I don't know. I had big aspirations. I knew.
Hold on. You transferred from Columbia Falls where you grew up.
Yes.
And you were like, I'm Bolton and I'm going to a bigger high school.
Yes.
And I don't know anybody.
I knew there were a couple of other kids who had the same idea. And so I did know a couple of people when we started, but nobody who I was incredibly close to. It really was a leap of faith.
Okay.
But I knew that they had a theater program. They had a great speech and debate team. And so does Columbia Falls. I need to say that.
Right.
They're very proud of their
plug.
speech and debate team.
A good plug. I got you.
And they should be.
Okay.
But they had a little bit more. And they had newer teachers who weren't, I was an insubordinate child. So I didn't have a great relationship with a lot of my teachers.
Oh, gotcha.
Especially older teachers who were a little more old school and expected a different level of decorum from students than I was.
I think also too, some of the older teachers, the school setup works, well, it used to. But it's gotten better for like neurodivergent brains and people that need some accommodations. But before it was more like, if you don't learn a certain way, I grew up in that. I'm sure my parents did too, but that's the era that I grew up in, where if you don't learn a certain way, you're a stupid kid.
Totally.
I'd say that. And we don't know what to do with you. So there's a very box. You have to fall in that box.
And you were seen by certain teachers. Like I said, I had a real attachment to English teachers the whole way through because they were looking for something different.
Yeah.
Than say a math teacher would. Historically, not great with math teachers.
I hear you, girl.
That is not my strength in the world. Yeah. Going to Glacier, I just felt like it would be a good chance to get a new start. And I had big aspirations of getting a full ride scholarship into a major college like UCLA. I wanted to go to film school. I had all these ideas.
Wow.
When shit hit the fan, for lack of a better phrase, I didn't handle it the way that I think I fantasized that I would.
Yeah.
And when things got really hard, it changed. I wasn't able to maintain that momentum. I felt pretty beaten down. And so I just took it and I just gave up as a teenager. But I did at the beginning have great aspirations.
Yeah, but are you from a very witty, I don't know, when shit hits the fan, everybody kind of finds humor in it?
Yes.
And then makes fun of it?
Totally.
Yeah, that's my family. So
well, you have to.
And then you make fun of yourself and then you do self-deprecation, your deprivation. And so like that, but then that can also lead into other things.
Yes.
Did you deal and cope with that with other ways?
Yeah. And I think that what now I can recognize as an adult was a deep sense of insecurity and self-consciousness. At the time, I was medicating with drugs and alcohol because I figured out that you actually can't feel insecure when you're buzzed, as we all know.
Yeah.
And I have a genetic predisposition to addiction. So when I was introduced to these things, I really decided to hit the ground running.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to go there, but I love that you mentioned that because I'm a weird health nut, genetic person, genetic hacker in my past life. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because it's interesting because the gene that's attached to that aligns with APOE, right? And I'm going to throw that out there, probably put some citation in the description of this episode, but it's even down to where kids that get cough syrup early on in life, they get the taste of the little slight bit of 2% alcohol. It triggers that genetic shift, that upregulation, downregulation.
Totally.
To where you tasted it, you get it even ignites that neurochemical release even more to where you're like, oh, that kind of felt good.
Totally.
Whereas some kids that don't have that genetic predisposition, they don't really care, just help them suppress their cough. But I want that cough syrup next time.
It's amazing. Like the first time, and this is fun. It is. It is. And I remember thinking my dad, I think he would be comfortable with me sharing this. My dad smoked cigarettes when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I was really judgy about it because I knew from commercials, etc., that you could have a stoma. I thought he was going to die, an early death, whatever. So I was shamey about his smoking.
Yeah.
When I was 15 and I was introduced to smoking, I remember taking the first drag of a cigarette and my immediate thought, instead of coughing, instead of throwing up, those horror stories, was, oh, this is why people smoke. I immediately and I'm like, okay. And it was nonstop from that point forward. Anytime I tried something anything that makes me feel good, I have a predisposition to take it too far.
Yeah. That chemical ignition. It
has to be different. And I didn't want to admit that for a very long time because it sucks.
It does suck.
It sucks.
And those chemicals, the way they create cigarettes now, it is set up to make you want to chase it again.
Oh, totally.
So I can see why that happens, why kids start vaping. And there are all these things that we're born with that the body is allured to. Feed me, Seymour, feed me kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they just get a tiny little taste of it and it snowballs into the next thing.
Oh, yeah.
So you were dealing with all that, obviously, and going through numbing all those pressures that you were placing upon yourself, which is a thing it happens, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if other people are putting pressures on you, but we oftentimes, to numb that, you just, okay, I'm going to take something so I don't have to think about that. So then where did that lead you in high school? Hey, everyone. I want to take a moment to tell you about an incredible place making a real difference. Two Bear Therapeutic Writing Center. This is an organization committed to creating a truly enriching environment where people from all walks of life can discover, learn, and grow. Their programs go beyond just activities. They truly offer meaningful experiences that enhance emotional well-being, promote independence, and build valuable skills. Whether it's through pediatric physical therapy, adaptive horsemanship, which I love, engaging summer camps, or the full ranch experience, which is breathtakingly amazing, Two Bear has something to help everyone thrive. Their slogan, Therapeutic for All, captures who they truly are. At Two Bear, every participant, volunteer, staff member, and supporter is considered an integral part of their community. So, whether you're looking to get involved, need support, or just want to learn more, come see how Two Bear Therapeutic Writing Center is changing lives. To learn more, visit www.twobeartrc.org. Join them in creating a space where healing and growth happen every day.
Oh, down some pretty deep, dark, twisty paths.
And I want you to feel comfortable talking about that.
Oh, yeah, of
okay,
course.
Gotcha.
I think that And I hear people say a lot of the time, I wouldn't change anything because it has made me who I am today.
Right.
I don't know that I necessarily feel that way. I would probably go back. Like when I have kids, I really want to have a family. I really want to have kids. I'm going to do my best to preserve that adolescent period. You're so malleable.
Yes.
And I was so insubordinate. My parents tried to keep me normal. Right. I just would not listen to anyone. And I still, unfortunately, have that.
Yeah.
Going on.
That's okay.
No, but I was absolutely determined to break whatever rule I felt like breaking.
You're questioning people. Like I love when people are like you that I can have this conversation with and go, don't just settle. Don't take the no and ask more questions. And were you that type of kid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a driver in life for tenacity. Sorry, I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. No, it totally is. Yeah. And it's something that, that quality in myself, I'm happy with it. I'm glad that I have it.
Good.
I feel like tenacity is good.
It is good.
Stick-to-itiveness is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it affected every area of my life. I think that I probably traumatized myself a little bit more than if I could go back and undo some things, I would. I definitely would.
I love that. I love that you said that.
I don't think that there's any glory in going through. I can understand how these experiences shape us as people.
Right.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't change everything. And I am grateful for the perspective. However, I also think that like had I protected myself a little better, had a little more self-esteem at the time, I probably would be in a further position along right now. Yeah. Emotionally. And it's been a lot of hard work to unpack all of that and get right with it. And yeah, if I could go back, there are a couple of things I would undo for sure.
I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, I think so too. There are the perspective is invaluable, but there are some things we could.
Yeah. I love that. I love you just said that. So let's transition into coming out of high school. And then when did you start recognizing, okay, number one, I'm probably not going to go to UCLA, right?
Probably not.
No. Probably not. Okay, that happens, right? So what am I going to do with my life? Did you have some sort of like, I want to do photography?
No, not at all, really, which is interesting. I got out of high school. I realized that I could work in restaurants. You know, you could always get a job in a restaurant, right? Yeah. And so I was working in restaurants. I was working as a barista. I was just getting along. Nothing was really calling my name. I had given up on my little Hollywood aspirations when it just didn't seem possible. And so I stopped thinking about that.
You're in that pivot stage.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
which is good.
That early 18 to 22, there's a lot of that. You have no idea what you want to do.
No clue. Yeah.
Which is ironic because those are the 4 years that a lot of people spend in college.
Hundreds, thousands of dollars.
Exactly.
Insane amount.
Yeah. I was just working and I was just trying to get along, hanging out with friends, doing whatever, getting into trouble, what have you. Photography came along because I was working as a social media manager for Copper Mountain Coffee, where I worked on and off.
Yes. Yeah. I love them.
I worked on and off for probably 7 years, 6 or 7 years there. And I still work with them to some capacity to this day. It was like we've managed a really nice, tight relationship.
Nice. Shout out to Copper Mountain.
They're awesome. They're really great. And so I started doing social media management for them, and I felt like I wasn't able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish with my cell phone. And so that was something that had always piqued my interest. But again, like skiing, there's a financial barrier, as we were just talking about.
So expensive.
Photography is really expensive. Cameras are really expensive.
Yes.
And you get what you pay for. So if you're not going to invest in that stuff, it's not going to have the same payoff. But I had officially reached the capacity of the equipment that I had. Yeah. And so I felt comfortable enough to take a jump. And when I did that, I just found that I really enjoyed that process. I loved taking pictures of people that they would then make their profile picture.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what an honor. When getting to make people feel good about themselves, etc. Like all these things just piled up and I'm like, this is awesome. So that is what started that jump and gave me a little bit of purpose in a professional sense. you know?
Yeah.
Because before that, I'm like, whatever. Not to say that making coffee isn't important. It very much is.
It's very important. I'm drinking my coffee.
And it's a hard job. And I, when I say that, I have no shade to baristas. I love baristas. I love them.
Yes.
I personally was not lit on fire by that career path. It wasn't.
Yeah, but your creative eye, right?
Yeah.
So that's one part of the photography piece, right?
Yes, definitely.
But then you've got the other aspects like business sense, and you obviously had a launching point from Copper Mountain, right?
Yes.
And then so you knew, oh, they're looking for this, somebody drinking a coffee in the building or business. And then so you saw the enjoyment in their face and the lighting and then all those technical pieces, but on top of that, you got to learn your camera.
Oh yeah. And I think it's probably the only technical skill I've ever really been able to get a handle on.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you go and get classes? Like
No,
at Flathead?
I did
Self-taught.
Yeah, like major hyper focus. And I tried to learn everything that I could as quickly as I could. And
wow.
Yeah. And it was
beyond
great
just
fun.
being an automatic on the camera. You're like, I'm going into manual. Let's make this happen and see how this works, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I learned how to do it on manual. I read somewhere that you should, if you can, you should start there so that you don't have to unlearn, automatic. I really enjoyed it. It was the first thing, like I said, that was ever complicated that made sense to me.
Wow.
Out of the gate. And not to say that I'm some photographer prodigy. I don't believe that, but I had a handle on it pretty quickly. Yeah. And I took a lot of pride in learning how to do it.
Yeah.
It felt good to learn something new and then reap the rewards of that.
So then you launched portraiture, right?
Yes.
So you were like, I want to do weddings.
I did some weddings. Weddings are crazy.
What was your first type of client?
Branding. So
branding.
Yes.
So Copper Mountain.
Yes.
And then from that launching point was what?
Models. You
did models.
I loved shooting models. I still do.
Okay.
I love them. They're so amazing. Like people who are really good in front of a camera and that symbiosis where we're like dancing together and creating something really cool. I love it. I think it's the coolest thing ever. Doing weddings and family photos and stuff. There is like a rewarding part of that too, but the creative aspect of photography, like creating art with the person on the other side of the camera also being an artist was always really fun.
So editorial.
Yes.
Type work.
And that's not something, you're never going to make any money doing that.
Really?
In the Flathead Valley? No.
Okay.
There are some people with excellent business sense, which I do not have.
Okay.
At all.
Okay.
I do not have that.
Okay.
I have a couple of friends who've made really successful careers doing things. You have to find some other way to work that editorial work in. I don't know anybody who just does that and lives here.
Yeah, I can see that. They probably have to leave.
Yes. And they're doing weddings and they're doing family photos and they're doing branding and they're doing all types of things. So at least that's my experience. And if I'm missing somebody that I don't know about, I deeply apologize for that. But
so editorial lights you up, and then you do enjoy the other pieces like wedding and family photography and things like that to help to offset the cost, to bring in money, right?
Totally.
Essentially.
And weddings are very rewarding.
Oh God, those things would stress me out.
They're long days. You're talking like 12-hour days, a ton of equipment. You're carrying all of it on you. People are crying.
People are yelling sometimes at each other.
Yep. And now that I've been married, I have a lot more compassion for brides and how insane the wedding day is. It's a nightmare. And so there are aspects of wedding photography that I find really exciting, and I still do it as an associate, and I still take on little stuff here and there, but it is not, I don't think I have the nervous system to be a full-time wedding photographer.
Well, that's good that you recognize that. Really, truly. And it's a competitive photography.
Very.
I cannot get over how competitive photography is here.
It's amazing.
But
there's
why?
A big talent pool. I think it's something you have schedule flexibility.
Okay.
It's not you don't need to have the greatest equipment in the universe when you get started. So you can buy something for less than $1,000, get started, take pictures of your friends, take pictures of your friends' kids, etc., whatever. Grab your girlfriends and go up to the park and have there's not a huge barrier of entry.
Yeah.
If you're able to get that first camera purchase done.
Yeah.
It's also fun. I think that there are a lot of people, myself included, who do it for a few years and then
fade out.
Yeah, because it is really difficult and it takes a lot of business sense to keep the momentum.
Yeah. And now you have to add like advertising yourself on social media. And then you would probably have to do all the post-production work.
Oh, absolutely.
Which takes probably out. Now that we've got tools and AI and all the fun things that we can access, not we, but you can access. And it's probably shortened, like old school photographers were like, I don't know, like they must have just spent forever on Photoshop.
Well, totally.
Yeah.
They definitely did. And then also, you know, when you were shooting film, you get 36 exposures. Or if you did a wedding, you're going to get a few rolls. You're not going to get 10,000 photos. There are a lot of really big galleries that happen now. People put in a lot of work. So I don't know. I feel like...
So it's really changing.
Oh, I think it's changed a lot. I've only been a photographer in the last 5 years, so I'm not speaking from experience with older school methods, but just talking to some of my friends who have been doing it for a long time, it has changed a lot.
Like crazy.
Yeah, and it's a sincerely difficult job that takes a lot of technical knowledge, a lot of know-how as far as managing your own business and saving for taxes and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Like you have to have discipline, and you also can't get sick. And you can't
no, you're the photographer.
If you're scheduled to shoot a wedding and somebody dies, you still have to go to the wedding or find somebody of equal value to replace you. And so it's tough. It's a lot of commitment. And so I have a deep respect for event photographers and wedding photographers.
Where do you see your photography business going?
I don't know.
You don't know. You're taking it step by step.
I'm floating in the wind.
I love that.
I'm in my retirement era. That's what I keep.
Well, you just got married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I just put that out there in the world.
No, that's great.
And who knows what the future holds?
Totally. I figure I want to have kids. So when I have kids, I'm probably going to be taking pictures of them.
Be a newborn photographer.
Who knows?
So adorable.
I don't want to lose the skill. I still work in marketing. So I still use my camera. I take a lot of photos of my family and I'm still actively trying to learn more all the time. It's not something I'm necessarily advertising.
Right.
Just because, you know, with the nonprofit, with my day job, it's a lot.
You do have a lot going on.
It's a lot to manage. And I appreciate the structure of a day job. I had issues I have issues with discipline.
Yeah.
Or I did in that context. And so if I were to do it, I would need to get really diligent about it. I feel like I'm getting there as I get older. It's getting easier to keep.
But you're so creative. So you're always going to be dynamic and chasing that dynamic shift.
Totally. I was born a knucklehead. And
no, you're not a knucklehead, but I'm a knucklehead. I don't want to be a knucklehead.
I know, so, it's hard.
Yeah. No, being dynamic, having a dynamic personality, number one, but also knowing that you're most likely a sanguine, where sanguines are always about emotional shifts. And if that's not lighting me up and I've been doing it for too long, I'm out. I'm done.
Totally.
Yeah. So I think like photography's great, and who knows where that can go into. It goes into all sorts of other cool businesses.
I'm leaving it open.
Good for you.
I own the equipment, so I get to have it. I'm not planning on getting rid of it. I'm not giving up. I needed, you know, after Bobby died, I needed to take a step back from being my own boss, because I didn't want to boss myself around. If I was my own boss during that time, I just would have done nothing.
Yeah. And I love that you brought him up, because I want to transition into your non-for-profit.
Yes.
But I first want to talk about Bobby. And this is going to start, so people listening, we're going to get deep. We're going to start getting deeper into this conversation. And it could be a sensitive topic for those that are listening, especially if you lost somebody in a tragic way. But I want to be respectful of your family. But I do want you to talk a little bit about Bobby, who he is.
Yeah.
And what happened.
Right.
The tragedy that took place. So can we just start with that?
Sure.
Okay.
So my brother Bobby was a lifty on Whitefish Mountain.
Oh,
big mountain.
Okay, a lift. That's what they call him.
Yes, he was a lifty, and he was mostly on chair 6, and it was his favorite thing in the entire world. Like, it just was so exciting for him. He had been doing it for a couple of years. So I want to start there. We're recording this in Whitefish, and so as I'm driving in, I don't live in Whitefish. As I'm driving in and I can see the hill, like it's instant. I'm like, oh my gosh, totally. Like it's really a thing. Anywho, So Bobby is my youngest brother. He was born in 2002. He was 21 when he died.
Okay.
Barely 21. He was 21 for an hour and a half. And there's so much to say. He was handsome and charming and charismatic, super charismatic.
Yeah.
Like we had at his celebration of life, there were people who just were on the mount. They just rode the lifts frequently enough.
They knew him at Chair 6.
Totally.
Yeah.
That they fell in love with him so much so that they felt inclined to come to his celebration of life, like complete and total strangers to us.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I mean, a lot of them too.
Yeah.
And just somebody who could light up a room, big, beautiful blue eyes, so much fun. Like his and I's relationship was always very giggly.
Are you guys close in age?
No. So we're all 2 years apart. So he's 4 years younger than me.
Okay.
So not quite young enough that he was like a baby doll to me.
Yeah.
But he was so cute. And then as he got older and we would wrestle, there was we had a very playful relationship.
Yes. I love that.
And so there's so much to say about him. And in a lot of ways, I've had to kind of compartmentalize his and I's relationship and the way that the world was before this happened. It's really difficult for me to access it, which is interesting because it was, the vast majority of my life.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to get in there. And
memories with him. And when people ask you to describe who he is, and you have to bring those memories back. Are they in lock mode?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think that
seems pretty common if you've gone through something like this the trauma behind it.
Yeah. I think that your brain has a way of compartmentalizing things.
Yeah.
To protect you. One thing that I think all of us have noticed, let me go back. Bobby was so wonderful, and there's so much that I could say about him. He was so much fun and loved to do crazy teenage boy things. The accident happened in March of 2023.
Okay.
He was out celebrating his 21st birthday at the Blue Moon with a bunch of his friends.
Yeah.
And they called someone to come pick them up. They crossed the highway to meet their ride at the gas station across the street. And my brother was struck and killed by a drunk driver who was more than double the legal limit.
What?
Yeah.
Well, so he was crossing that crosswalk to go to the gas station.
It's important to note that he was not in the crosswalk. He was crosswalk adjacent, but he wasn't technically in the crosswalk. And this is the reason why the driver was only charged with misdemeanor crimes and was sentenced to his maximum sentence, which was 1.5 years.
Wait, was the driver going through a red light or a yellow light?
No. The boys crossed the street without paying attention, and the driver was also not paying attention.
Oh, shoot, because he was drunk.
Because he was hammered. Yeah.
Okay.
He was incredibly drunk.
Okay.
And so...
Which I'm assuming by Montana state law, like Illinois law, you have to watch for pedestrians. So if a pedestrian crosses when they're not supposed to, you are still if you just nail into them, you're liable.
Yeah. And that is not the case in Montana.
It's not?
No. No, it's not.
What the hell?
Yeah. If they're in a crosswalk and you drive up on the curb, or if you run a light, I'm sure that changes the circumstance. But just hitting a pedestrian is not technically, or at least it wasn't in this case. It's hard to say because there's so much nuance in the law, and there's so many nuance in each individual case. But in this particular context, no, it wasn't. And
so he's out with his friends on his 21st birthday. I don't know about you. My 21st birthday, I was completely hammered.
Totally.
And he responsibly was like, I can't drive. I'm going to call an Uber. The Uber's parked, and he's crossing over. And this gentleman was going whatever. I think the speed limit there is like
60.
It's 60, which is crazy, I think.
It is. And that intersection has had problems in the past.
I know. I've seen different little crosses and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's another point of conversation. But he's crossing to go to his Uber, and he gets hit head on. Or I know the details. Did he get head on? Did anybody else get hit?
Nobody else got hit, but they were close. He was with two of his closest friends when it happened.
Was he behind and then the driver hit him last?
Yes.
Okay, got you.
And so it's just, they're essentially, so we're bringing Bobby's Law to the House at the end of January.
Yeah.
And this law would make it so that an aggravated DUI is considered criminally negligent, which in this case it wasn't. So because the only law that he was breaking was that he was an aggravated DUI, as in he was 0.16 or higher, more than double the legal limit. That was technically the only law he was breaking because he didn't run a light, he didn't hit a pedestrian in a crosswalk, etc. So this would make it so that just that blood alcohol content level would be considered criminally negligent.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Because at 0.16, I don't know if people have a complete understanding of how you feel at different BACs. If you're not breathalyzing yourself, you probably wouldn't have an idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't have an idea. Yeah.
It's worth ordering a breathalyzer on Amazon because at 0.16, you are drunk. Like your motor skills are seriously impaired.
Got you.
You know, being on the road at that point, that's when you start to black out. You start to throw up. There is a lot that can happen starting at 0.16. And in Montana, there are roadside hazards everywhere. You have deer jumping out. It
is the craziest place to just even drive without anything,
Absolutely.
any impairment. But also too, metabolism wise, and people like myself, I have probably a smaller window. I don't drink. So like having I'd get easily drunk on one drink.
Right.
And this gentleman, this gentleman was way over the limit.
Yeah.
Like passing out basically at the wheel, drunk.
I wasn't there.
Okay.
So
I want to know this. Did you guys ever get an opportunity to speak with him?
we did, not necessarily directly, but in the courtroom, you sit with them, you know.
Was this his first offense?
No, but his first offense was a long time ago, so it was outside of the statute of limitations. Yeah, we did have to come face to face with him. And I think something that's really important to remember and to recognize is our whole mission, Montana Bar Fairies, and the whole concept behind changing Montana's DUI culture. It's like we want to encourage people to make better choices going forward. We really don't want to shame people for things that they've done in the past.
Yes.
You know, this particular man, obviously there's a lot of complicated feelings there. There's a lot of complicated anger, frustration, grief, sadness.
All of it.
And that doesn't go away, obviously. But also I think, you know, and I think this is true for a lot of my family as well, vilifying just him and holding a lot of resentment towards him is just...
Where's that going to go?
It's not going to go anywhere.
Exactly.
And he is my hope for him, and I can only speak for me, is that he gets out of jail and doesn't drink anymore. Yeah. And that this doesn't that he can live a quiet life and cope with, you know, I mean, he was there. He did it. He has to live with that. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to take him down. I'm not trying to be, you know, but I also think that there is a serious value in the surviving families getting justice for these victims. Right. There is something psychological that happens when the justice is not aligned with the offense. Yeah. And so it's important that we change this, that this particular situation doesn't happen to other families. But I also, with him specifically, it's not, taking him down is not the goal for any of us.
I'm so glad that's where you guys' minds are at. Yeah. I mean, it gives a little bit of mercy. Yeah. And offers a little bit of space of redemption.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I don't know, he has a family. There are people who love him, and people make poor decisions sometimes. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't be held accountable. I'm not at all saying that. And I don't feel that way, but there's a humanity that we all share. And I don't know, it's not my life's purpose to destroy his life. No, I would hope. Now, I might feel differently if he got out and got another DUI, if I see him on the jail roster or whatever. But if he were to get out, my hope for him would that he would eventually find peace within himself. And
I'm so glad you said that, Carli. That feels healing. It feels some form of healing. But I also want to say, and I want to get into the Montana Bar Fairies, but I first want to back up Montana culture around alcohol.
It's pretty bad.
It's freaking crazy.
It's terrible. Growing up here, I moved to Southern California for 9 months in my early 20s. And the shift between kids there, my age, and kids here was amazing. They didn't know what a senior kegger was. Like, they didn't do that.
Oh, a senior kegger. They didn't know about that?
They didn't know about that.
Okay, gotcha.
Also, it was a small sample size, but just little things. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys weren't like getting blackout drunk in a field with random strangers. And like, what? That's interesting to me. So it's such a huge part of the culture here around drinking and driving. And I think with a lot of our outdoor recreation, as healthy as all of that is, a lot of it is celebrated with beers after the fact.
Yeah.
And so
around a campfire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Camping, I will say, is significantly less fun.
I know.
Without drinking. But it's connected to so many parts of our lives here. And it does not have to be. I truly believe this.
Yeah. And I think also the desolation between city to city, and you're on a road that's a 2-lane highway and people drive. When I moved here, I couldn't get over the speed limits here. They're way higher, like 70 on these 2-lane highways with elk crossings. And
I know
it to me is mind blowing. I'm a slowpoke, so I'm always in the right lane and I don't abide by that number. My kids get on me about it, but I'm always very cautious and I'm like, why are people flying? But to add the fact that they're like, oh, I got a road sody. I don't know if people know what a road sody is, but it's back in Illinois, we call them road sodies. Pop open a Coors Light and go from point A to point B, which was always only like about 15 minutes or 10 miles or whatnot. But here it's long stretches. Yeah. Because everything is so far away from each other.
And I think that at one time when we were dealing with a lot of farm roads and we didn't have the population we have now, it probably was slightly less dangerous. I don't know if that's true. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'd be curious to know the statistic per capita as our population has grown. Has it gotten worse or better? But we also don't have any public transportation, really. Yeah. It's certainly not affordable to get an Uber from point A to point B in the town that you're in is going to cost you $25. If you're in Whitefish drinking and having a good time and you live in Kalispell, it's going to be $45 or $50 to drive
and if you leave your car there, then you got to pay that to come back to get it. Right? Yeah. So it all adds up.
It all adds up. And so I think that this is all a part of the conversation. It's really nuanced and really complicated. I don't think it's as simple as bad people drink and drive and good people don't. Yeah. I really don't feel that way. I think that there's like an infrastructure that needs to change. There's a cultural attitude toward drinking and driving that needs to change. I think probably the best solution is just finding somebody in your group who can be your designated driver.
Exactly.
Because they don't cost any money, and then you just have to make sure that they're well taken care of, buy their dinner or whatever. Yeah. They'll make sure you get out of there at a reasonable time. Nothing good happens after midnight. They don't want to wait for you. Right. I think that's a great solution for the everyday person, is to just find somebody to drive you home. Don't drive there. You can't drive back if you didn't drive there.
Yeah. And you take turns.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us have been in the situation where either we've had a DUI or we have drunk driven. I don't think I think if people are being like really honest with themselves, how many times have you had several glasses of wine or 2 glasses of wine even, but you didn't have dinner and you're like, I think I'm okay. That kind of thing is just something that is so normalized. How often are people taking keys away? And I think that as we go forward doing that, being a designated driver and taking people's keys away are 2 huge components of this problem. Yeah. And that, not public shame. I don't believe in public shame. There's a reason that we're not posting pictures of people and shouting out people's names necessarily. I don't think that's constructive necessarily. It could be wrong, but it's just how I feel. I forgot where I was going with that.
No, public shaming. There's just more positive reinforcements that we can put into, which is what Montana Bar Fairies is doing. Yes. And I also think too, Carli, I don't want to go into my own personal tragedy, but when you've experienced a loss like this from you've got a personal family member, I grew up with somebody that had his whole life ahead of him. Right. Just like Bobby. And then something very tragic like this happened from a drunk driver, and it changes your whole perspective on drinking and driving. I mean, everything changes. And I remember even in college and beyond college, I was adamant, like, I'm not getting in a car with somebody that drinks. And then one time one time later, I will admit this, later on, I was, like Illinois people do. Oh, we're not that far away from my house. The bar's here. I'm there. And I remember thinking, I'm a little impaired. I got in the car and I felt such guilt. So consciously, I was still there.
Yeah.
But I also knew, I'm like, I am tripping over my words. Who am I to preach all this when I just got in the car and I know I had a couple drinks. I think I had a vodka or something. So that kicked in quick.
Totally.
And then I was like, dang. And I was like, oh, I'm only 10 miles away.
Right.
On a 35 mile per hour road. But in the back of my head, I felt so terrible about it because I was like, what am I doing? That was what happened to him. Like, Bill, like that happened. What are you thinking? And yeah, I'm one of those people, but if you've never experienced a tragedy like that, you don't know what it's going to do to you mentally.
No.
Long term. And then how you view alcohol, how you view people drinking. I think I went through a period, I don't know about you, of just people annoyed me when they were drunk. All of it. Because you're trying to process all the emotions behind it.
Yeah. I think drunk people being annoying is definitely well documented. And I will say, I think I was top tier annoying when I was drinking. I think I really took the cake on that. So I'm not trying to be judgmental. I understand there are various reasons that people drink, and not everybody who drinks is an alcoholic.
Right.
Everybody I'm related to who drinks is an alcoholic. But no, I'm just teasing. But there is my exposure has been a little tainted because I've been around whatever. Anyway, I definitely have felt being secondhand embarrassed for drunk people. Yeah. It's not a pleasant experience.
Right. It changes everything.
No. And I think that it was a coincidence that I stopped drinking and Bobby died 2 months later.
Wow.
That was not, it has certainly helped. Maybe helped isn't the right word.
It accelerated your ability to get through stopping drinking. Right. Yeah. There's a real reason.
Yeah. It really
solidified.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
And it was something that I had teetered with in the past. I knew it was a problem. I knew it was going to come to a catastrophic head at one point or another. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I could feel that this is not getting me any closer to where I want to be.
Right.
Nothing about this is rewarding for me. And it just causes me to have anxiety.
Yeah, and you wake up the next day, you feel like shit and you're throwing up and you're anxious for 4 days.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. I quit drinking too because I was like, I can't do this.
No. And it just is such a time suck. And I didn't want to jeopardize my relationship. I didn't want to jeopardize my relationships with my family. It had come to a point. And so anyway, it was a coincidence that I stopped drinking when I did. And I have not looked back with any regret.
That's wonderful.
There's never been.
There's a positive out of this. Yes. And it shifts.
It sounds, and I wonder how this would sound to someone who hadn't been through something like this, but are these little nuggets of perspective that happen when the unimaginable happens.
Yeah.
And it's something that maybe it would have gotten there eventually, but it would have taken a long time. And I am grateful if I'm trying to look for things to be grateful for. I'm grateful for the perspective that we found through this. So you really realize what actually matters and what doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because when your world stops like that, it really right sizes all of your other problems. Everything that feels like it's the end of the world, you're like, oh, turns out that was not the end of the world.
It's not that big of a deal.
No.
And I want to go back to what we were talking about, Montana culture. I have never realized how big of a problem drug overdose. My cousin works for the Poison Control Center out of Denver, and they work with, they're basically the rep that manages all of Kalispell. And I was speaking with her about you coming on, and she mentioned, I never realized so many overdose cases. There's tons of alcoholism up here.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of factors involved in that, but one of the other things too, I started diving deeper into, Montana law around, just even driving under the influence. And I was looking at that in comparison to, I always go back to my home state because I think it takes a long time to change this type of culture. We started in 1984 in Illinois, shifting perspective on, I don't know if it was like a Reagan era, like the Reagan era about, I don't know, she was big on like smoking and drinking and all the things. I don't remember her messaging because I was pretty young at that time, but things started shifting. And in 1984, they started changing imprisonment, sentencing, community service, and then it shifted in 86 and it got harder. And then they changed, even lowered the BAC to 0.08 in 97. And then they started to really crack down, stiffer punishments. And then in 2024, they even increased penalties for high BAC levels, enhanced monitoring systems for repeat offenders. There's zero tolerance policies. Now, if you look at Montana law timeline and how it takes years, people, to change even one single perspective that's ingrained in society, specifically in communities like small communities, right? So if you're looking at Montana law timeline, 2005, it's signed a bill making driving with an open container illegal.
Right. Yeah.
Before that, it was like anything goes. And then jump to 2022, stricter laws were enforced, right? So the BAC just went to 0.08 for most drivers, 0.04 for commercial drivers. I can't even believe semi drivers drive impaired. It's crazy to me.
I know.
And then the penalties, first offense is a fine of $600 to $1,000. I remember my mom being so adamant to scare the crap out of my brother and I when we started driving of, don't you dare get in that car with anybody driving. Even me being in the car associated with, I was like threatened that I was going to get thrown in prison because everybody was so terrified because the laws became stricter. State police officers were more on every freaking corner. We don't have that here.
No, we don't.
I don't think I ever see a state police officer. I did get pulled over once for speeding slightly over the limit, and I talked my way out of it. Yay. But anyway, I was like, where did you come from? I never see a state officer.
I know. We don't have very many.
Yeah.
We do not have very many. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And it's a big nuanced conversation because not only are police officers not paid well, we don't have the budget to do more. And that's a local government issue that we all have to vote on come that time. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
We also don't have a very big jail. So putting people in jail is not an option as much as probably it should be.
Yeah.
There are certainly people driving around that should not be driving around. Proven via their actions that they are not responsible enough to hold a driver's license.
Yeah. So it's interesting with even the law in itself. It's so new.
Absolutely.
And I do feel like we live in the Wild West. And I just want to talk a little bit about the most recent case. And I know I want to hear your perspective as far as how it's impacting you and your family with the Siegel court case that just happened that killed Wyatt Potts. And I think it seriously injured his wife. No,
his girlfriend.
Fiance. Were there others involved as well?
Her teenage daughter was in the back seat. And she was pregnant and lost the pregnancy.
Holy buckets.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the details of that? Do you know much?
Sure. Essentially, this was an accident that happened in front of the Echo Lake Cafe in Big Fork. Okay. And the owners of the Echo Lake Cafe have been so wonderful through this process, which we can talk a little bit more about that later. Essentially, the driver was allegedly driving very fast through that area. The speed limit goes down to, I believe, 35. There's a school, there's a little intersection, and he was driving very fast, and they were pulling out, and they didn't see him because he was driving he was not going the speed limit. That accident was horrifying, and the impact on us is, and the only reason I'm talking about us is because I don't want to speak for their family.
Right.
I remember because Bobby's case was high profile, and hearing the discourse around something that's going on that's so intimate and so painful for you sucks. And so I don't want to speak out of turn on this, but I do think that considering that the driver was very much a repeat offender, like more than 4 DUIs.
What?
Yeah, I've heard 6 and 7. I don't know which one it is.
Like in Illinois, if you get like a second, you basically take your license away.
And I don't know if he had a valid driver's license. There's a very real possibility that he was driving and he wasn't supposed to be driving. I'm not entirely sure. And these cases take a really long time to flesh out. Bobby's case wasn't resolved for almost an entire year because dates get pushed back and our court system is overwhelmed and there are a lot of factors involved. Anywho, those toxicology reports and such won't come back for months.
Right.
So I'm not saying any of this definitively, but considering that the man was acting in a way that insinuates that he was heavily intoxicated, and I don't know, connecting with those family members and being able to talk with them and having this like insanely bizarre, horrible experience in common.
Yeah.
It's a club that nobody wants to be in,
Right.
but it is a club. Like we try to stick together, and finding it gives me a sense of purpose to be able to communicate with others and be able to look people in the eye and sit with their grief. Makes people really uncomfortable.
It does.
They don't like it.
I know.
And so being able to sit with their grief and hang out and help in whatever way we can help is helpful for us in our own grief as well. And so obviously it's painful, and it brings up feelings. We did a courthouse picket this morning and then yesterday. So that's what it was before
very
this.
fresh. Yeah.
Very fresh. And as of recording this, I'm not sure how that turned out. It's an omnibus hearing. They're just setting the date and the pre-release conditions. Yeah, it brings up a lot of emotion and memory, but it also gives us something to do that feels like it's helping.
Yeah.
And it's really important. Nothing could stop me from being there.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for my mom as well. Just finding ways to help other people.
Yes.
And have some purpose and try to prevent this from happening. Trying to take a little bit of a different angle than some of the other drunk driving awareness kind of conversation. Like trying to take a little bit of a different angle in the positive direction. I don't know. It's tough. I feel like
it is so tough.
It's tough. And it's hard to talk about. It's hard to access.
Yeah.
There are a lot of feelings about it. And I feel like yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I want to say though, you made a good point of trying to find a different way to reshape the culture here. And I love the mission of Montana Bar Fairies. Can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. Montana Bar Fairies is essentially, we will wander around bar parking lots in the early morning on the weekends. I was wondering
about that. Like, I love all the photos. You guys are so on Instagram. You're on Facebook, right?
Yes.
And what's the Instagram handle so people can go check it out now?
Montana Bar Fairies.
Montana Bar Fairies. Yeah, they post these cool, like, is it like 5 a.m? When time are y'all getting up?
We're getting up early. We're getting up between 5 and 6. And people pick up their cars at like 7 a.m. So you have to get out there early. And people are going to work. But we alternate cities. So we're never in the same place 2 times in a row.
Okay.
We just put it in a little plastic bag if the weather requires, because we're in this little paper envelope.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So folks, if you're listening, and she's pulling out this little tiny envelope with their logo on it.
We have this beautiful little envelope, and then when you open it up, it shares, this one happens to be Bobby, but it's not all Bobby. It shares a photo of a local victim, an abridged version of their story, an emphatic thank you for not driving home drunk, and then a gift card to a local coffee shop.
That's amazing. Can I see it?
Of course.
Just so I can describe it. So it's very cool. Like, it's this little tiny cute, like a little, a gift card, just a little package. And then it talks about her brother. And I love this. It even just gives me chills. I was hit and killed by a drunk driver on my 21st birthday while crossing the street to get into my sober ride. Just unbelievable. And then thank you for doing your part to keep our community safe by getting a sober ride. So you're reinforcing positive choices.
Yeah.
And then they also add in there a $5 gift card towards a coffee place.
Yeah. I mean, it's inconvenient to leave your car. We know this. And it's part of the reason people don't, and they drive home.
Right.
So we were just trying to think, like, what can we do to just say thank you for not driving home hammered and killing somebody, killing yourself. Like, the risk is not worth the reward, right? And so we're just trying to find a way to not only honor these victims, we have 5 right now who are on these cards, to honor them and keep their memories alive, but also, when you are hungover and you're picking up your car and you have to look face to face with the face of somebody that was killed by a drunk driver, I feel like there's potential for that to be a really impactful experience.
Absolutely.
And also it's sweet. It's not shame. It's not being a jerk. Like, we're just trying to find something to move the needle.
Did you come up with this concept?
I did. I was driving to my mom's house. I was driving to my mom's house in the throes of immediate grief. And I was driving by the Scoreboard Bar in Kalispell, and I saw a couple of cars all iced over in the parking lot. And I just thought, I wish there was some way to just, I was tempted to pull over and write on their windshield, "Thank you for not driving home." And I didn't do that, but I called my mom and we started talking about it and trying to find a way. I think for both of us, finding something to funnel that energy into has been a huge helpful component of this process. It gave us a mission. It gave us something to do and something to try. And we started on New Year's Day last year. So 1 year ago, as of, pretty recently. And we've gone out every weekend, and it's early, but it's great. It's worth doing.
It brings community.
Yeah.
It feels purposeful and it feels positive.
Yes. And we've had a really great response from the community and from people who are volunteering to do it.
Yeah. Volunteers.
Yes. It's usually my mom and I alternating weekends and bringing a volunteer with us.
Yeah.
I'm going this weekend, probably going to drag my dad along. It's great.
Get up early, go do this, and then go get some breakfast.
It's awesome.
I love that.
So it's a lot of fun. And it just feels like a good way to keep the conversation going. When something massive happens in town, it's big news for a few weeks and it's all everyone's talking about. And then the dust settles. But that reality is still there for the families that are surviving that accident.
Yeah.
Once the buzz dies down, there's still people that are hurting. And I think that keeping their memories alive is important.
Absolutely. I love that you put those pictures on there.
The pictures I felt were important.
So important.
When you are able to put a face to the name, then you can read these statistics and 261 people were killed this year. However, I made that number up. I think it comes from somewhere, but I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. We won't put it in the description of the episode.
You will see a statistic of however many people have died this year.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as seeing the face of someone, knowing the family of someone. We're in such a small area. Everyone
knows everybody. It brings more personalness to it.
Totally. And if you haven't been affected directly by a drunk driving accident, you know someone who has.
Absolutely.
And so,
unfortunately,
I know it's just a reality for a lot of us here.
Yeah.
And so just finding some way, we're really hoping that this works. We'll do it as long as we're wanted.
I love that, Carli. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And I want to ask you, how can people support this?
So we have a donate, but essentially cash donations are great because we can buy coffee gift cards with them. Yeah. And that keeps us going. We have a couple of coffee shop sponsors like Copper Mountain Coffee.
Wonderful. I love that.
And Florence Coffee Company. And so they both donate us an amount of cards every month. That gets us almost all the way through.
Yeah.
So cash donations are super helpful. We would love to expand into billboards. I don't know if you remember or if you have ever seen the Montana Meth Project was a big, impactful nonprofit. I think that kind of shifting our messaging into billboards and buying some ads and spending a little more money on marketing would be helpful. So that we want to grow in that sense, just to spread awareness. So cash is great, but if you own a coffee shop or you own a business and there's something you want to give away as a reward for not drinking and driving, that's something we're absolutely open to as well. And if you're willing to volunteer time, whether that be data and statistics and researching what's going on at any given time in the state, that would be incredibly helpful, and coming out and ferrying with us as well.
I love that, calling it ferrying. It's called ferrying.
Yeah. You're
I want to be a fairy.
I know.
That's
it's so
amazing.
Fun. It's so fun.
Do you guys call yourself the fairies?
We do. We definitely use it as a verb.
You could have shirts that have I'm a fairy. I love it, Carli.
It's great. It's really fun. And it's very fun. And a great way to get up early on the weekends. Really.
Yes. I do want to ask you something really personal. I'm sure, I don't know if you do this, but do you have these conversations with Bobby in your head?
Yes. But probably, I feel like in certain moments, I feel the connection to him. I don't have a ton of like verbal communication. I did it first.
Yeah.
As time has gone on, like it's for me, it's certain songs, it's certain sites.
Yeah, certain things that pop up.
Yeah, because and music is one of the things that we had in common, and it would be something that he would get so excited if he really loved a song and he wanted to show it to me. He wanted me to like it so bad. Sometimes I did. Sometimes I didn't.
That's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's things like that make me feel really connected to his memory, seeing things that didn't exist while he was alive that exist now that I know he would have liked. Yeah. Is always a big thing. I don't do a ton of talking. It's interesting though, because I know that the way that everybody grieves is so different. It's so different. Even within our family structure. Yeah. Everyone did it differently. Yeah. And I know it's different for parents and for siblings. Losing a child and losing a sibling are two completely different experiences. Absolutely. Yeah. But even just with me and my brother Caleb, like the way we processed it was totally different. And I don't know, but no, not a whole lot of talking.
But do you ever feel like, I don't know, I always think to myself, you know, I never think, I'm more spiritual, but I never think they actually go away. Right. They're all around us in some fashion. They're showing us signs and they're trying to communicate. And my question too is just the fact that you came up with this concept that's so positive. You could be pissed. You could be angry. You could wallow. You could just grieve and, you know, and I'm sure hardly get out of bed and just be angry. But you took this tragedy and you took it for an opportunity to honor the victims, honor Bobby's memory, and then also do what is hard, right? Which is reinforce positive behaviors.
Yeah. And to be fair, I was angry and could not get out of bed for quite some time.
Absolutely. I would expect it, right?
Yeah. And I would say to anyone who was going through something traumatic, like taking that time to heal and be an absolute wreck is really important.
So important.
I feel like I am in a better position now, having been an absolute wreck for probably 5 weeks, like not getting out of bed, crying every minute of the day, eating my weight in mashed potatoes and whatever. Like there's a healing in that and feeling desperately sad. And then as time has gone on, I've been able to, like, I had that time. Yeah. And then it hits you in waves when you're not expecting it. Yeah. Generally. And it's profound and it hurts and it can hurt like the day it happened. But I feel like I've processed a lot of the sadness. So I'm moving toward not being so sad all the time.
But I do love the fact that there's little moments, like you said, coming in here and seeing the mountain. But I think in those moments, it's a sense of appreciation too.
Yeah, definitely.
I do want to get to, I know you've given a lot of messages, especially for those grieving. This conversation has been really profound. It's been a really profound conversation for me. My question is, what is one of the messages that you would like to give to someone who chooses to get behind the wheel after drinking? I know you've already stated it, but I would like for you to give that message to those people.
Okay. It is not too late to join us on the other side of this. And if you've done it in the past, I don't think that makes you a terrible person. I think you should feel a healthy amount of shame, but I don't think you should let it rule your life in the sense that it continues the behavior. Yeah. It's never too late to be better. It's never too late to be better. And everyone makes mistakes. Everyone does things that don't necessarily align with their morals sometimes. And you're not trapped. Come to the other side.
Come to the other side.
Also, if you find yourself drinking and driving frequently when you drink, maybe you shouldn't drink.
Exactly. Thank you. Amen.
That's my best prevention tip. That's what worked for me. Yeah. Was just not drinking at all. Yeah. And I've never woken up the next morning after a party or what have you and been like, man, I wish I drank last night. Never. Yeah. I've had moments where I'm like, well, okay, the social lubricant would be nice. I'm feeling a little awkward, but I've never woken up the next morning with that. I'd never. So I try it out. And if you have a really hard time leaving it behind, then maybe that's something to look at too.
Yes. I love that. I hate to say this, but we're in the last 3 questions.
I know.
We could talk forever.
I know.
Carli.
This was long. I think we probably went long, huh?
That's okay. No, it's perfect. I'm glad we hit so many great points. My first question is, if you could spend one more day with Bobby and share the incredible work you're doing to honor his memory and create a lasting legacy, what would you want him to know? I know it's a heavy one.
I think if I think about what I would do if I got to see Bobby again, I probably wouldn't even want to talk about Bar Fairies, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'd want to go for a drive.
Yes.
Show him all this cool music that exists right now that he would be into. And just really express, like, when he died, he was working a lot. I was working a lot. When you're like in your early 20s, you're growing apart, and there's not growing apart, but you're focusing on your own thing.
Yes.
You're obviously not living with your siblings anymore. There's this, and like just getting to learn a little bit more about his life and what was important to him at that time. Like in that year before it happened, I didn't see him a whole lot because he was busy.
Yeah.
And he was going to school and he was working, and I would do anything to talk to him again.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't waste any time on the Bar Fairies. I mean, it's super important. It's super important. And I love doing it. And I'm happy to do that.
Yes.
We're doing it to honor his memory, but also just to better the community and feel safer on our roads. Not for a pat on the back. I don't even want a pat on the back. I just, when we hear the people being scared to drive at night because of the drunks and how, everybody feels it. And so we want to help that process along. But
and you're doing it. It's amazing.
Thanks.
It's amazing.
I hope so. I hope that it's helping and moving the needle. And that is the hope. That is the hope.
You're doing it. It's amazing. Okay, we're going to shift to a fun question.
Love it.
If your camera could talk, what would be the one moment that it would talk about? What would be the one moment that it would talk about and that would brag about that you captured?
Oh, that's a fun question.
Yeah.
I recently did a shoot with Sophie C.
Okay.
And she is an amazing makeup artist.
Yes.
She dressed up as Snow White. It was a whole thing.
Okay.
And I carried a big, huge flash, and it was so exciting. They turned out awesome. They were so cool. She looked so cool. I can't think of anything.
You probably have had a lot. You probably have had a lot.
I'm like shuffling through the brain right now, not thinking of anything
That's
crazy.
Cool.
Sorry, that's not a very satisfying answer.
No,
we did so much fun.
You've done a lot of fun stuff. So good job. That's awesome. That talks about your success with your photography business, which is wonderful.
Thank you.
Our last question, which I'm so sad about, but I'm excited to hear who you pick. It's our signature question for the podcast. It's if you could pass the mic to a Montana woman to share their story on the IWD406 podcast, who would she be and why?
I thought about this a lot, and I had one person that just kept coming up, and her name is Leah Lindsay.
Okay.
She's right now a local real estate agent, but she's been a lot of things, and she worked with my dad at the radio station as a radio personality for 25 or 30 years.
Very cool.
She is...
Which radio station?
B Broadcasting.
I love them.
Yeah.
Does he still work with them?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's been doing the morning show on B98 for 30 years. Almost. But Leah's amazing. She's picked herself up from, she's risen from the ashes several times in her personal life, but also she has done major humanitarian efforts, and she works with the community, and she fundraises like a maniac, and she's awesome. She's so interesting and so charismatic, so great to talk to, and she has an interesting personal story on top of all of her professional accomplishments.
Wow.
Cannot sing her praises enough.
At all. Say her name one last time.
Leah Lindsay. She's everyone's best friend in the whole world. If you've met her, you're probably like, I am probably one of the most important people to Leah. Because that's what she makes you feel. She's one of those.
I love that.
She's awesome.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to meeting her.
Yes.
And hopefully she'll come on the podcast.
Oh, she'll do it.
Okay, cool. I'm so grateful for you and what you guys are doing. You guys are awesome. Can you tell people where to go to learn more about Montana Bar Fairies?
Yes, please. So montanabarfairies.org. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on TikTok. I'm trying, but I'm not doing very well. On our website, there are links to donate. There are ways to get involved. We also ask that you support Bobby's Law and call your representative to let them know that you think that aggravated DUI should be considered criminally negligent. The bill is known as Bobby's Law, but it's LC 1340, and we would really appreciate your support.
Thank you. Thank you for putting that in there.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
If you don't know who your representative is, feel free to get in touch with us as well. We can help you find it.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I enjoy talking to you.
Thank you so
Come
much.
back, Carli, as a co-host. All right.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
A special thank you to our podcast guest. You can find all of her links in the description of this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe. you will be notified of future podcast guests. Follow us on our social media platforms and stay tuned for our next podcast chat with an amazing Montana woman.